office, and we'll just, share it if necessary when people ask about, the program, instead of just sending, the paper policy of what we agreed to. Cool. So it's recording now. Chief, I do see you have a TV, or not Chief, Major Fernandez, I do see you had a TV on back there. I don't know. You may want to cut that off. Not sure, just in case. All right. Awesome. So,
okay, I'll turn it off. I'm trying to multitask here with the commission meeting.
Oh, no, you're good.
So.
Oh, no, Chief Gauls, you're good. It was Major Fernandez that had like national news on, but you can keep it if you want, for sure. Definitely the commission meeting is equally important. Great. All right. So we have here today with us Tracy Ford and Hope Braveheart. We're going to be working with them. They're from Community Mediation Maryland. We're going to be working with both of them to help train our mediators that will be applying to our program, and then obviously helping run the mediations from both of the offices. So today's intent is to really for them to give us a background on the work they do and how they feel it is important for community police mediation programs, some of the stories that they've heard, and just kind of a brief introduction, obviously, of how we got here. From there, I know we have Tommy Reyes from the FOP, as well as JC from the City of Miami. If anyone has any questions as a Q&A session, we could then ask them as well. And some of these questions are going to be things that maybe community members want to hear about as well. So when people come back to look at this video, they have a reference point. So with that being said, just as a brief introduction, we can probably go around the table and kind of talk about how we got to where we are today. So I'm Rodney Jacobs, Assistant Director of the CIP. The whole idea of community police mediation, and in some ways kind of started as a byproduct in the CIP office. We felt as though we could do more with some of our lower level cases in a way that helped not only bolster community policing, but also trust within the police department. So we kind of decided like, hey, maybe community police mediation is something we should look into, and we should engage the police department on ways in which we can make this possible. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Major Fernandez to discuss kind of his role in this as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Major Jose Fernandez. I'm the Major of Internal Affairs. I'm having technical difficulties with my computer, so you'll see that it says Sean McDonald on the screen. So obviously, I'm the Major of Internal Affairs. I agree with this program, like Rodney mentioned. This is a great way to increase communication and build community trust. Oftentimes people come in here and they file a complaint and they don't get results, or they don't get the results that they wanted for months at a time. And I think this is a great opportunity where we can bring the resident together, the complainant together, and the police officer, and we can work it out in a different way.
I'll just rename you there, Major Fernandez. So you're good now. Chris, could you introduce yourself?
Sure can. I'm Chris Bammund. I'm the director of the CIP. I've been doing civilian oversight now for about 15 years. I have a little experience with this from another jurisdiction. I found that it really helped open the eyes of the community into the positions or the difficulties that police officers experience, as well as opening the eyes of police officers to the way citizens respond to the way they are spoken to, and for the most part. So I think this is a win-win for all of us, and I look forward to it. I'm also looking forward to a decreased caseload in terms of our investigations. So it becomes easier for me and Major Fernandez to administer the work that has to be done when a matter goes under investigation. So there's so many positive things that can come of this, and I'm hoping that we get some real buy-in from not only the people in the police department, but also from the citizens in the community.
Thanks, Chris. Tommy, could you maybe introduce yourself there? I saw you come in for a quick second.
Hello. Sorry, I'm downstairs in our downstairs area. The AC upstairs isn't working, so waiting for the repairman. So I am Tommy Reyes. I'm the president of the Fraternal Order Police here for the Miami Police Department. I guess my role in this is just kind of the medium between the city and the police department and the police officers, trying to bring everybody together. So I think trying to make this a good thing, a positive thing for officers, and hopefully I can change some minds and get our officers wanting to get involved with this program.
Thanks, Tommy. Chief Goss, would you like to comment?
Sure. Assistant Chief Sharice Gauze, I'm here on behalf of Chief George Kalina. We're really excited about the program. As was already said, this is just another extension of the department's commitment to building trust in the community. It's also a great opportunity to see internal affairs, the FOP, the CIP, and the community working collectively, to build a better understanding and build better relationships. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Chief. So I know we do have JC here. I don't know if he wants to make a comment. I think he's here just to make sure we stay within legal parameters. But JC has been, really helpful in this process with the police department, as well as Russell Motley, who is on our panel but couldn't make it today. So I definitely wanted to highlight both of them. JC, you feel free to say something or nothing at all.
Good afternoon, everyone. JC Perez. I'm an assistant city attorney and police legal advisor. I guess realistically, all I'm here to do is just make sure that we are all within the parameters of the code and charter and the policies of the police department, and to some extent the CIP, even though I understand that you guys are independent in your own process, but make sure we're on the same page, essentially, is all I'm here for.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. So with that said, now that we've all been introduced, Tracy, Hope, have at it. If you can just give us somewhat of an insight on, like, obviously the work you do, how you will train the mediators, and then also maybe give us some stories on how you've seen this work really well in other jurisdictions.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Tracy Ford. I'm Director for Quality Development with Community Mediation Maryland, and I am been a mediator for 17 years, a trainer for 15 years, and I have been working with mediation centers across the nation to develop their police complaint mediation program. Ours at Community Mediation Maryland, we believe that training should be engaging. So we use a dynamic style of training, and specifically for police complaint mediation, we have police officers as part of the police complaint mediation training. So they are learning on hand what mediators will be doing, and the residents get an opportunity to talk to uniformed police officers about what the work is that they're engaged in, and the process of going through everyone, police officers and residents are going through the full basic mediation training with the component of police complaint mediation. They everything that we teach in 3 different ways. So the first way is we do an interactive dynamic exercise, and then we talk about how that relates to the work that we're doing. Then we do a read through of what it is, what are the lessons that we're working on today. And then we do, the third practice is we jump right into role plays and take the lessons that we've been learning in the first part of the day and actually, see what they look like at the mediation table. So mediators and officers alike get a chance to see what the actual work of making decisions collaboratively look like. And I'm here with one of my favorite colleagues, Hope Braveheart. Hope is director of the AmeriCorps program, and she is essential in terms of making sure that all the logistics are together for the trainings, and making sure that that everything that folks need to be able to connect the lessons to the actual mediation table, that they have present for them. She is also a trained mediator and an excellent advocate for the work that's happening here. I'm not going to monologue too much longer because I do better with question and answers, but I do want to say, in terms of the police complaint mediation work that has happened, we've done this in several cities in Maryland, Montgomery County, which is very close to the DC area, Baltimore City. We've also done this in Salisbury, which is most people know as the Eastern Shore, and New Orleans. New Orleans was one of our first sites, and the work there has helped shape how police complaint mediation programs are set up at all the other sites that we have worked with. And I think that officers have been impressed by how much the relationships with the community that they serve have improved with this, but also the information that they get relative to cases, open cases that they have. And so a lot of times officers are able to, you know, build the relationships such that residents, community members feel more comfortable sharing with the officers information that has been able to progress a case. But they are also having to do the hard work of sitting down with someone that they may have only met one time, and that was a very contentious moment, you know. And so this is taking their relationship that didn't exist before one, you know, potentially negative incident, and they've been able to build programs, build connections, and build communication lines that support not only relationship between two people, but that improve safety within that area as well. With that, I'm going to check in with Hope. Hope, what else would you add to what I've said?
Well, I have seen the power of this work, especially through AmeriCorps members that are working closely with Baltimore City in Salisbury. And we're trying to open up an AmeriCorps program in Louisiana and other areas on the East Coast as well. So I've been recruiting people to serve, AmeriCorps members to serve in these positions that support this work and these programs, building the capacity of these programs. And I would say that it's incredibly powerful to understand how police officers approach a situation and see that shift, and also how community members can approach police in a different way.
That's great. So I guess we can kind of roll into the Q&A portion of it as well. And thank you, Tracy, for kind of explaining how, I guess, the training of the mediators would work. You know, one of the main questions that I always get, you know, how does community police mediation different from what we see in the legal spectrum with courtroom mediation? I know there's a big difference between the two, but one, what is that difference, and how does it play more practically in the sit down of the mediation itself?
So the model of mediation that we train our mediators and the police officers in is called inclusive mediation. And definitely, you know, it's about relationship building and repair. And so folks are focused on, like, what is it that you needed in the midst of that interaction, and how can that happen in going forward? So we know we can't, you know, you can't undo what has already happened, but you can build upon people's values to make sure that interactions going forward are more in line with each of the individuals involved in that situation, is based on that there's a resolution that's based in their values. So for instance, I think one of the things Chris mentioned is that communication is often one of the things that we see a lot of complaints about, like how folks were relaying information, or folks felt uninformed, or folks felt disrespected. And so the community members, the officers, have an opportunity to talk about how will communication happen from this point forward, you know, and maybe there's a legal, you know, input in it, but generally folks just really want, you know, a commitment, you know, like a human connection and a human commitment that going forward, that respect, you know, this is what respect looks like to me, and this is how it will be implemented. This is how I can do that. And the officer gets to say, all right, and I need to prioritize safety. I need to prioritize safety of people, other residents, you as well, and of officers at the scene. And so they get to talk together about how respect and safety can coexist and can happen at the same time, and make plans, like to the fine detail about how they will implement that. Did I answer that question?
You did.
I get excited sometimes and I forget what the original question is.
Very passionate. Hope, did you have anything to add to that from your experience? Okay, not a problem. So I want to open it up to everyone else. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask Tracy or Hope. I do have some others as well, but I want to give, obviously, I'm sure police officers will look at this as well, and they're going to want to know some perspectives about what happens in this process, so they can feel more comfortable to engage in the mediation program. So, Tom, are you hearing anything from the members or other officers that may give them cause for pause or maybe some ambiguities to clear up?
So I got a little bit of feedback from the members, but as I talk to them more and more, more people seem to be positive. You have ones that, of course, are just not going to come around, and we have some that see it as a positive thing. And I think generally the ones that we're focusing on this program anyways are the ones that are willing to participate. So the ones that are flat out against it are the ones that probably wouldn't be eligible to participate anyways.
If you don't mind, I'd like to push back on that just a little bit. So it is great, and I definitely want to make sure that folks who are excited about this definitely have an opportunity to participate in it. And it's also important, particularly in terms of the training, that we have people who have some resistance involved in the training, right? Because their buy-in is going to be essential to forwarding the program. It can be, it only takes a couple of naysayers and people who are reluctant to turn a lot of people's ears and heads against the program. So, I'd encourage us as we're doing outreach for the police officers that will participate in the training, that we're doing a mix of, along the spectrum of people who are gung-ho to the people who are, definitely have their head cocked and eyebrows raised about whether or not this can be implemented. We find that when we have that range, that spectrum represented in the training, that the project, the long-term health of the project is more successful.
I get that.
We can handle it. We can handle it.
I had a question. Hope, you say that you work with AmeriCorps people in order to recruit people who are trained and actually perform the mediations. Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that, how you recruit the people, how you make the selection? Can you tell me a little bit about the profile of some of the folks that have agreed to do this?
Sure. Well, I'm not looking for people who are trained, because we have wonderful trainers. So I'm really looking for people who are interested in doing a year of service. And I'm looking for open-mindedness. I'm looking for willingness, but then I'm also looking strategically at, do we have every voice at the table? Do we have people who have graduated? Do we have people who are currently in school? Do we have people with different backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different people with different skin colors? Because the ultimate goal is for us to have a team of mediators, whether they're AmeriCorps members, which is my piece, that reflect the community that they're serving. And if we all brought a hammer to build a house, there's not so much that we could do. But when we bring lots of voices to the table, then we can create teams that see each other's blind spots and figure out who needs to lead when. So I'm looking for gender diversity, and we have people who have PhDs, we have people who didn't graduate high school, and everywhere in between. And as long as they can mediate and they have a passion for being of service to others, then we have the training that can get them where they need to go. And Tracy and our other trainers are, the magic, if you will, of the program. I'm the logistics. I'm kind of her assistant. I'm good at finding things and planning things and scheduling things. And she is an excellent trainer. We make a good team. You're muted, Tracy.
I was just echoing, we make a good team. We could both argue on who the magic is. When things I need just appear before me, I swear that's magic.
Does that answer your question?
Just one thing. Most AmeriCorps participants are young people. Is that true?
No, not at all. This year, actually, we have 50% of our AmeriCorps team are people over the age of 30 in our team. A lot of people think that there are some streams of service that, like disaster relief, and National Civilian Conservation Corps, that's like 20 to 26, and they wear uniforms and they sleep in barracks. We have a different stream of funding. So it's anyone from 17 years old to 99 is the cutoff, because I can't put 100 in my recruitment. So there's no age limit in our program.
One of the questions I was considering, and this is somewhat, oh, I'm sorry, Chief, did you have something? Go ahead.
Just wanted to know what the length of the training is. And then secondly, how does one that wants to participate in being a mediator, how do they show that interest? Or is there an application process? Are those applications vetted? Is it an interview? If you could explain that.
Yeah, I can explain the second part of it, Tracy, because I don't know if you've read the policy that we've agreed on. So how it's going to work, Chief, is that we have an application that within the coming weeks will be on the CIP website. I'm also going to give it to MPD as well, and you guys can place it on your website if need be. And we're going to get all the applications in, and we'll come up with a self-determined deadline on when we'll stop receiving applications. And once we receive all of them, then all of us will kind of sit down and maybe even vet some of them before we invite people into interviews. So I plan to take the same team that we have right now and say, hey, these are the applications that we received from members of the community that have interest in being mediators. Who do you think we should have come in for an interview based upon some of the things that we're hearing in this meeting that makes a good mediator, whether it be, the diversity component or open-mindedness component. We're going to make those selections and then obviously invite people in and have a more thorough look. And then the other part there for you, Tracy.
And in reference to the training is a 45-hour training. We have with what we call a 5-hour follow-up that happens after folks have completed their apprenticeship. And this training involves the basic mediation skills in addition to the specific format for police complaint mediation. Like I said, it's a dynamic training, so it's interactive. It's not pad and pencil and note-taking kind of training, but it is very engaging and hands-on, and people are moving around and they're sharing, sharing their experiences to deepen the learning. And they are learning all the skills that we use as a mediator, including inclusive listening, reflections, inclusive listening, the power of open-ended questions, how to run a brainstorm so to facilitate collaborative decision-making. And I felt like there was another component to your question, Chief Goss.
The second portion of it was answered already.
Okay.
But since you brought that up, and one of the things is, I think you've kind of answered it. AmeriCorps, is that a requirement that they have to be a member of that organization, or can it just be anyone from the community?
Yeah, we're looking for wide spans of the community. I'm sorry, Rodney.
Yeah, no, you're good.
It's so, better.
And I don't know if the AmeriCorps ways how they do it in other jurisdictions. Our program specifically will just take members of the community with no real tie to any other organizations. So like I said, the application will be available on the city website. Anyone can apply. We're just looking for that layer of diversity. How the training, at least from my perspective, will be set up is that obviously we'll give preference to the mediators that we select from this pile, which I think since we're kind of starting off in a pilot program and kind of slow, we're looking to have maybe 5 to 8 mediators if we can find them. And they'll get preference, obviously, to get the training, but the training can be up to 20 people, I believe, is how the contract is written. So we can still take maybe 10 or so people some people from maybe the CIP or some people from the police department that we think, hey, it would be good to kind of get you in here and get you trained on mediation and kind of understand about this program. So there is bandwidth. Obviously, the CIP is paying for the training, so there is bandwidth for members of the police department to come in, sit down, and see how these mediators would be trained and get trained yourself. So
the other piece I would add to that, that these skills that that we train for mediators translate well in multiple aspects of folks' lives. So I think their officers have said that they have reported being able to use the skills as an everyday part of their job to help with their relationships within the community and with other officers. And also, you know, your personal lives. We say that there's, you know, like there are a lot of opportunities to use these skills to prevent as well as address conflict.
Major Fernandez, you have any questions? He's like, yeah, I got it. I'm good. He's like, I just like the fact that we're going to probably have less cases, and that's great. No, so I know Chris and Chief, you've mentioned things. So we have about maybe 10 minutes left. I want to keep this short because I'm hoping that people that will be applying to be mediators watch this and say, hey, I want to do this, or I don't want to do this, or just to have more information about the program. You know, one thing I do want to mention is that both parties, both the CIP and MPD, agreed to start this, and obviously not every case or complaint will go to mediation. Some of these will continue to investigate depending on the severity of it. And there will be a suitability criteria to determine if this is the right complaint or the right officer, so that we have a good cohesive environment that leads to, you know, different outcomes. So one thing I do want to talk about, Tracy and Hope, is if you could share with us some outcomes, maybe some good outcomes and some bad outcomes, just the stories that are surrounded within these dynamics.
Yes. So one of my I think I'll call it my favorite police complaint mediation situation was everything kind of went wrong at the beginning. The officer that showed up was not the person that the resident meant to be talking to, but since they were there, the officer knew about the case. The resident daughter had actually been robbed, and her purse with her cell phone had been stolen. She was a minor. And the mother was talking a lot about how her daughter felt attacked by the officers because her purse had been stolen, and there was a suggestion that she wasn't being honest, that in fact that she had lost it or sold it, and that she was trying to, you know, cover it up, and how frightened she was, and how, you know, her daughter had been, you know, in the house crying because, one, she'd been attacked, and then she felt additionally assaulted in her interview. And she talked about how she was worried because that interview had happened without her as a mother had been present with her daughter. And so the officer there, who was not the officer who had done the interview with the minor, was very apologetic, was surprised to hear all that had happened, and was, you know, committed to making sure that that never happened again. And the mother was saying, and, you know, no one followed through on the information that I sent because someone actually called from the cell phone. And this was the first the officer had heard about it, and they were able to make progress on the case as a result of the information that was exchanged in the mediation. And so had it not been for the mediation, they probably would never have spoken again. And so they were able to make decisions going forward about how communication with minors would go, and able to progress that case. And she was not able to get her cell phone back, but she was able to get an order that proved that the phone had been stolen. And so she was able to access the insurance to get her phone replaced. And that had been a big part of what was going on. And so that was one of my favorites. I think one that was harder was the resident came to the mediation, at the night of this was a separate case. The resident had been intoxicated the night of the case. And while he came to the case to the mediation and was not intoxicated, he definitely had a different view of reality than everybody else in the room at the time. And it was a exasperating conversation for the officer, but in the officer's feedback, he felt like like the night of, there was a lot of things going on, and he was really just trying to make sure that the officers that he supervised were safe, as well as the other community members were safe. And this resident's behavior was compromising his ability to do that. And he said that in his feedback to us, he said his written feedback to us, he said he felt heard, and he felt like for the first time, for a while after the incident, he was like, did I make all that up? Because that felt crazy. Did I make all that up? And so in his feedback, he said, I felt validated. And so it's not our job as mediators to confirm that somebody, was witnessing something crazy, but just the process of making sure that we're working towards understanding, help that officer to feel like, okay, I did not make this up. This is not something in my head. This is actually being a very difficult situation. And so it felt validated, and was actually able to advocate for the program when one of our volunteers was doing outreach at roll call. And so he talked about the situation and promoted the service to other officers. So those are two, like one that was definitely 100% a win, and another one that was, they found a win out of the situation.
Oh, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I know in Southern Maryland, they've had police complaint mediation as well. And one of the most powerful stories from those police complaint mediations is just that they have this opportunity to see each other in a different way, to have a different conversation when there isn't, while it's still tense, there isn't the immediacy of charges or the chaos of like Tracy was talking about in the first story. And the ability for this one police officer and this family member to have a conversation about, when the police show up, bad things happen. When the police show up, people get taken away. And the community member and the police officer were able to make a plan about doing something different. Like, let's create either a picnic or a softball game or something, so that it's not always when something bad happens, the police show up. So that's one of the stories that we talk about a lot.
Thanks for that, Hope. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes or so. Obviously, we don't need to take all the time because I'm sure everyone is busy. But if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to ask now.
I have one follow-up question. This is JC. With regard to the training, is there any legal component, for example, maybe specific to Florida law or justifications for a stop or police encounters for the mediators, just, to try to facilitate or try to help them get to that process towards understanding between the parties? Or is this something that CIP has to train perhaps after the mediators are trained?
There's space to incorporate that in there, but JC, I'm sorry, can you say a little bit more about what your concern is?
Sure. So for example, criminal law, general criminal law, it's applied across the entire country. Officers have certain powers and authorities, and people have certain rights depending on what type of justification an officer has for that encounter. So, mere suspicion versus reasonable suspicion or investigatory encounters. At some point, if an officer does have reasonable suspicion that a person is committing a crime or has committed a crime or about to commit a crime, they're allowed to detain and ask certain questions. But certain people who may not be aware of that may believe that they're just being harassed. So for purposes of the mediators trying to facilitate that understanding as to why an officer took certain actions, is there any component, just because a mediator can come from any background, correct?
Right. And we
and I
encourage them
don't
to come
know.
from multiple. Yeah,
Right.
and we can look at that and based off of the kind of cases that might get referred. So oftentimes cases that are in that realm, JC, usually go a different route than mediation. And I'm very happy to accommodate those kinds of cases. And we can talk about like, what are the, so every area we have to kind of look at what are the criteria that that area would need to make sure that gets covered. So in Maryland, we have to cover not Maryland law in terms of, as you're talking about, but Maryland law as it relates to mediators. Like what are the laws around mediation that we're asked to do? And so we can look into that and adjust the training to accommodate that as needed.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that too, JC, insofar as the cases that will be referred, or the complaints that will be referred to mediation, it's really going to be incumbent upon the CIP and obviously IA to find out the best cases, especially if they deal with criminal nuances that you're talking about. If we don't think that understanding or open-mindedness or just good conversation will come from it based upon the intricacies of the law, then that may not be a good case for mediation. The only thing that I would be concerned about in that situation is that if it kind of devolved into this conversation of, oh no, you're at fault because you didn't understand the law. And I don't know if that's the goal per se, although there is something to be said about that in a healthy way. But in cases where it's a little bit more intricate dealing with the law, then we may just want to stick to the typical investigation process.
I don't disagree, and that's why I didn't mention like probable cause encounters. Okay. But like sometimes, like an officer may have certain information to, to warrant asking a couple questions, and that's where the discourtesy complaint comes from, even though the person was not ultimately arrested. But I don't know if that's something more for the officer to articulate at the mediation, or whether or not it would help the mediators in facilitating that type of conversation. But
yeah, I think really what we're looking for in mediation is a conversation that's held on, that's based on human law. So what are each other's values in regards to that, in regards to the situation that happened? Because that's going to be the collaborative point, because mediation is community mediation, police complaint mediation is dependent upon a collaborative process, right? That so the rules are the participants' rules and based in their values. So like how the example that I gave before of what are all the ideas that you would have about stops that would get both assurance of safety of officers and residents and respectful communication. Sure. So those would be the parameters that they would, based off of what was important to them, that's what they would prioritize. And so if one of the things they wanted to make decisions about was they wanted to make some decisions that were grounded in criminal law as a value, then they would have an opportunity to figure out what pieces of the law they felt like were important in terms of incorporating into their agreement. The participants would.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have just 2 more questions, Friday. One is, who makes the final selection of the mediators after the interview process has happened? Who makes that final decision? Is there a board, or is it the CIP's decision solely?
No, it's the decision of whoever is kind of doing the interview. So the way I envision it, and this is kind of how the policy is written, it's going to be obviously a representative of the CIP, maybe Chris or I there as well to facilitate, someone from the police department, IA, and then I think Tommy also said he wanted to sit in. So I'd imagine that we're all going to be in there kind of mulling over the individuals in this application process and trying to determine who would be suitable to do this kind of work, bearing in mind the fact that we obviously want a diverse candidate base as well.
And just lastly, is there a particular term of appointment for the mediators? Are they at will? Can you just switch them out as you deem necessary?
Yeah, so the way we're going to do it is that each mediation will have 2 mediators, and the mediators will be picked by the participants in the mediation. So we'll have kind of like a slate of, these are the people that are, are trained mediators, and you can pick from these person. The police officer will be able to pick, and obviously the community member will be able to pick as well. If the community member is a minor, then they'll be able to bring in, a family member or another representative with them as well. And from there, it's really kind of run by the people within that nexus. We kind of, obviously at the CIP, we'll have a mediation coordinator that will find the space for this to occur and coordinate schedules and things of that nature. But the process in itself is kind of like Tracy said, it's really dependent upon the values of the people that are going to be there and how that unfolds. So the next part of the question is that we do intend to pay the mediators a stipend because obviously some of these mediations can last upwards of 2 to 3 hours. So I don't necessarily believe in free labor of that kind. And then also I think on the application as written, we do require a commitment of at least a year because obviously we're going to, if not more, because we're going to be obviously training them, and that costs money. So we don't want someone that's just going to be coming in and staying for 2 months. So we require that you at least have this much time. But if you want to stay forever into perpetuity and we think that there's no reason to compromise you or remove you, then you keep that mediation position. Okay. Any other questions? Tommy, this last one. Major?
I'm good. I think we're good. I think we're ready to go. I'm ready to move forward.
I know you've been ready since like day one. I've never seen you so excited about anything else. So one thing I will do is a couple plugs so that if anyone watches this video and wants to be a mediator for the City of Miami Community Police Mediation Program, the application will be available in the coming weeks on our website, and that's miamigov.com/CIP. And if for whatever reason you can't find it on our website, although it will be easy to find, you can email me at rjacobs, JACOBS, @miamigov.com. So with that, that will conclude our recording.